Right now, a lot of people out there are talking about childhood trauma and how it affects people. But the one thing that's a core symptom and is almost never talked about, and I think this is the most important thing to know about complex PTSD or childhood PTSD, is dysregulation. And to me, all the other information is just not even usable unless you understand what neurological dysregulation is and how to get re-regulated. Whether you struggle to connect with people, or you get limerent, or you go for unavailable people, or you have addictions, or you get emotionally dysregulated, all the things we talk about here, it's all normal for CPTSD, but the place to begin your healing is with neurological dysregulation. And this is an almost universal symptom that underlies all other symptoms that we get. Once you know what it is and when it's happening, you can start healing it. When you're more regulated, you can begin healing the other stuff, the emotions, the memories, the patterns, the relationship problems. But all of this depends on your nervous system having a basic level of regulation. And when you experience trauma, your basic level of regulation tends to be very disrupted. That's the thing that you probably were never told and never got help with. So today I'm sharing my basic video on how to tell if you're dysregulated. People who had a rough childhood often go through life feeling or knowing that they're different than most people. Everyone knows that early exposure to violence and addiction and abuse or neglect can have a lifelong effect on mental health and behavior. It's common sense, right? Researchers understood these effects to be mostly psychological or learned from dysfunctional parents. And while that's partly true, we now know the primary injury is also, sometimes mostly, neurological. So early trauma dysregulates the brain and nervous system. And that potentially can trigger a whole range of problems, from obesity to ADHD, to heart disease, to sex addiction. But for people with childhood PTSD, just being dysregulated is a problem that makes ordinary things in life ridiculously hard. Things like going on a date, spending time alone, expressing an opinion, or just buying a pair of shoes can set off dysregulation. So if you could see an MRI image of the brain in this dysregulated state, you'd see the front left cortex go dim and inactive, hampering the ability to reason and pay attention. And you'd see the right front cortex flaring, just with a flood of emotions, suppressed reasoning, overreactive emotions. Is this familiar? It's not all in your mind, it turns out. It's in your brain. So there's this change of activity. Brain waves are irregular. Breathing and your heart rate, they become ragged and out of sync. They should be going together. Every time you inhale, your heart rate goes up slightly. You exhale, it goes down slightly. But when you're dysregulated, this is called heart rate variability. It's not going together, and your body feels it. There might be numbness in your hands or your mouth or your face. It can be hard to find words or complete tasks that you're in the middle of, or to just pay attention. Personally, I get clumsy when I'm dysregulated, and I trip on curbs and I drop things. Once I broke 4 different dishes while doing the dishes. Just one time doing the dishes, I just kept dropping things. My handwriting changes. For a lot of us, we say things when we're dysregulated that we don't mean, and we do things that we don't even want to do. Or sometimes some of us grow silent and we withdraw when we're dysregulated, or we may feel desperate and act impulsively, or fly into a rage, or lash out. So after an outburst like that, you might have experienced this. Sometimes there's no emotion, like emotions go way up and then they go down. And we behave coldly to the people we've just hurt. And my friend told me once that when I'm upset, I have a blank expression on my face and my voice gets really flat. And so it's impossible for other people to tell from the outside what I'm feeling. What it looks like when I do that, it looks like I don't care. And I remember once a teacher telling me that my son, when he was in preschool, that he had been really naughty that day. And I was mortified and I was freaked out and worried I was parenting wrong. And she said, "I'm telling you this and you obviously don't even care." So I finally have some insight about why people have ever read me that way, or thought that I'm an uncaring person. I'm not. I care very much. Do you have this? It is so hard when dysregulation is changing the way you interpret reality and the way you express yourself. But here's the thing, these reactions are not happening because I'm bad or anybody is necessarily bad or selfish or weak. Okay, well, there's a little of that sometimes, of course, right? But that would be true of anybody. These reactions are happening or they're made worse because the brain is dysregulated. Nobody knew this before. Not doctors, not therapists, not preschool teachers. Nobody knew. But now we know. One way that I've described the feeling of dysregulation to people who have never really experienced it is that it's like wearing a pair of headphones with heavy metal music just like blasting in your ears, and you're wearing somebody else's glasses that make everything else blurry, and you're wearing a giant pair of shoes like a foot too long for your feet, like clown shoes, and a mop is on your head and all the dirty strings are slapping you in the face. And no one can see this, and they think you're normal, and you have to pretend that you feel fine and that you can hear everything that's being said and that you understand and that you're in the conversation, when really you feel disconnected and uncomfortable and frustrated, but you have to try to guess at what connected people would say. You have to think about how to hold your face so it looks appropriate to whatever the other person is saying. And you can't hear what they're saying because the noise in your head, the perceived noise of all that stress, is you're experiencing it like flooding, like loud. Dysregulation gets activated when you're confronted with stressors and crises. And remember, it can suppress your ability to reason while it also amps up your emotions. So you see how this explains so much why those of us with childhood PTSD appear to keep making the same bad choices over and over, even when we say we're never going to do it again, and even when we mean we're never going to do it again, but then you look down and there you are, you're doing it again. So I'm here to tell you, you can break this cycle. You really are capable of making good choices and good changes, but it would really help if you could learn to re-regulate. So how do you know when dysregulation is happening? Let's start with the regulated state and what it feels like. When you're calm, brain activity is even, and it's driving body responses and emotions in an even and predictable way. But then when strong emotions trigger dysregulation, our thinking changes. We can go into reactivity. We might withdraw and get silent or get confused and just say things or freak out or do something impulsive. And it's hard to perceive accurately what's going on in those moments, like what just happened? What's the actual problem? Is it me? Is it the other person? What am I supposed to say? In a dysregulated state, we can't tell if a person is safe or dangerous, and we can't tell whether our words and actions are appropriate to the situation. And sometimes we say things and do things that are not appropriate and we later regret terribly. The trick to noticing dysregulation is to recognize the signs, and they might be a little different in different people. Here are some clues. You feel spaced out. You're at a loss for words. You can't remember where you are. Has that ever happened? You feel scattered. You're trying to do a lot of things at once, but you're finishing nothing. You feel hurried and overwhelmed. You're tripping over things, dropping things, losing things, getting clumsy. Or your voice and facial expressions are flat. Or you're in a rage. Or you feel a huge urgency to express what's bothering you. You just feel like it has to be right now. Or you can't feel parts of your body, your hands, your face, your mouth, your nose, your feet. And dysregulation often begins with an emotional flood. You get very upset or scared from something that's said or something that happens, but sometimes the trigger, it's like nothing you notice. You can wake up dysregulated, in fact. That's something called an emotional flashback. So that's what it's like to be dysregulated. I've put a quiz in the description section. It's called the Dysregulation Self-Assessment Quiz. You can check it out, see if you've experienced some of the most common signs of dysregulation. But right now, the most important question is, what can you do? Number one, first, notice that you are dysregulated. If you can do this one thing, you can control your negative impulses and give yourself the time and space to re-regulate before you begin saying anything or doing anything that could be destructive. Are you flooded with emotion? Are you going numb? Say to yourself, okay, I'm getting dysregulated. Number two, be safe. This is not a good time to drive a car. Seriously, if it's happening, pull over and take your time. Don't go running into a crosswalk. Don't try to use a table saw. Give all your focus to getting yourself into a physically safe place where you can pause and get re-regulated. All right? 3, if you're threatened with violence, some of this won't apply. So just return all your focus to getting yourself into a physically safe place, whatever it takes. 4, if what triggered you was an argument, instead of escalating the fight, you can use gentle words to stop the interaction, at least temporarily, like, I want to continue this conversation, but I need to take a breather to calm down. Or if you don't want to tell the other person that you're triggered, tell them you need a bathroom break. Or if you're on the phone, say you have a call on the other line. 5, when you need to step back from a situation, you don't have to get into a big discussion about it, because remember, talking about it can actually make dysregulation worse. So just find a way to put the conversation on pause. 6, then buy some time. Separate from the other person if you can. Go to a room by yourself, even if it's the bathroom. No one has to know what you're doing. If it feels urgent to express this anger and rage you're feeling, take an even longer break before you try to resolve anything. Number 7, here's a quick technique. Stamp your feet on the floor. You would be amazed how helpful it is to bring yourself back into present time in your body. And as you stamp each foot, you can say quietly to yourself, right, left, right, left. And this helps your brain recalibrate and re-regulate. 8, you can also take 10 deep breaths, focusing particularly on the out breath. 9, another measure you can take that no one knows you're doing is you can press your tongue to the back of your teeth. You could just sit in a meeting like that and you're giving yourself a sensation that's helping you come back to your body. Number 10, you can sit down and feel the weight of your butt in the chair. And this is one more way to get back inside your body. 11, sometimes what you need is to eat something. And when you're stressed, if you're like me, you're going to crave carbs and sugar. But it's usually something more balanced that you need to get grounded again. Carbs are often a quick fix that it's common for us to reach for when we're feeling dysregulated. And you get an immediate little kind of warmth and comfort out of it, but then, unfortunately, it leads to more dysregulation. So a more balanced meal that has protein in it will also help you kind of come back and get grounded and stay regulated. If you need some comfort, number 12, you can wash your hands and feel the water and the soap on your hands. Warm water is particularly calming. But also, you can expose yourself to cold water, like jump in a cold shower to get a quick snap, a reset to your nervous system, and it can help you bring you out of that kind of fog and trance-like feeling of, I'm so angry, I'm so upset, I have to say something. It kind of snaps you out of it. You could also get a good squeezing hug, and hugs can really help to re-regulate your brain. If you don't have anyone around to give you that hug, you can try pressing your back into a corner and wrap your arms around yourself so that you can feel pressure all around your torso. We are wired to calm down when we're hugged, so that's handy. And that's it. You now have a whole bunch of things you can do when you notice you're dysregulated. And I've written them down in a downloadable PDF that you can access in the links below too. I go deeper into the science of dysregulation in my courses, and you can also check those out below. Now, some people ask, is medication helpful for treating dysregulation? Some researchers say yes, some say no. But given that we now know that the underlying problem with a lot of childhood PTSD symptoms, it's not a chemical imbalance per se, that's corrected by the introduction of more chemicals, but rather it's brain dysregulation. There's evidence that some medications can actually do more harm than good, in fact. And one of the reasons might be that they interfere with our natural ability to re-regulate after a period of dysregulation. And this would be true also for, recreational drugs. They can interfere with re-regulation. So think about it. Everybody gets dysregulated sometimes, and everyone eventually re-regulates. So with CPTSD, we just tend to get dysregulated more often and for longer periods of time. So the goal is to learn to re-regulate as soon as we notice it and to stay regulated more of the time. That is life-changing. So that's the first part of the solution. The second part then, with your nice, fresh, regulated mind, is to work on the behaviors and circumstances that have flowed out of you living your life dysregulated for so many years. The childhood trauma happened and we definitely were affected, but this is the stuff that holds us back now. So move your focus onto the life problems that are holding you back now, the behaviors, the reactions you have. Focus right now what you're doing to make a happy life, to become your real self. Because it's time. The past cannot touch you now. It's time to be your real self. As funky as you are, as beautiful and miraculous as you are, you were made to be something much more than someone who just struggles with symptoms. If you can master re-regulation, you can then have all this space in your life and all this possibility. You can meet people, you can try things, you can quit things. You can make a positive difference in the world, and that's where happiness comes from. These all become choices when you learn to re-regulate. So here's a video I picked out for you that will help you keep going on healing your dysregulation, and I'll see you over in that video.